Number 9. Shana and Dominique Decree. In February of 2019, 45-year-old Shana Decree and her 19-year-old daughter Dominique murdered 5 family members, including 3 underage victims, in Morrisville, Pennsylvania. The 2 women were allegedly inspired to commit the heinous acts by the Black Israelites, an extremist group in which they took part via the internet. Shana's ex-husband, who lived in North Carolina at the time of the murders, indicated that he'd been keeping in touch with his children until February the 1st, when his former wife cut all communication between them. Several calls were made to the police by concerned relatives, and the search of the home was finally conducted on February the 25th, leading to the discovery of the bodies. Mother and daughter initially pleaded not guilty, but ultimately accepted a deal to avoid the death penalty. During their testimonies in court, Shana and Dominique defended their actions by insinuating that the victims had wanted to die. On September the 28th of 2020, they were both convicted of 5 counts of first-degree murder, for which they received 5 consecutive life terms. Number 8. Levi Belfield. Documented serial killer Levi Belfield fathered 11 children with 5 different women before he was ultimately imprisoned for the murders of Marsha McDonnell, Amelia Delagrange, and Millie Dowler. In May of 2022, the 53-year-old applied for a marriage license after getting engaged to a woman whose name hasn't been revealed to the public. Belfield's 40-year-old fiancée began sending letters to him in prison, even after he was sentenced to 2 life terms, stating that she believed he'd changed since committing the killings. Joanna Collins, the mother of 2 of Belfield's children, claimed that he was abusive throughout their relationship and flatly rejected the notion that he should be allowed to marry his new lover. Collins told the media that her ex-husband was an expert at manipulating and brainwashing women. Belfield threatened Collins for her attempts to undermine his new relationship, but she nevertheless campaigned against the law that allows dangerous criminals to marry while serving their sentences. Number 7. Kendra Torres. On October the 30th of 1976, Kendra Torres was kidnapped and abused by Thomas Brown after he lured the 16-year-old and her husband, Julio Torres, into a fatal trap. The couple had decided to take a trip to Mount Hood, Oregon, to celebrate their 1-year anniversary. While seeking out a good fishing spot, they stopped to talk to Brown, who suggested they check out an isolated location by the water. The man then fatally shot 21-year-old Julio as well as the couple's dog, Rusty. Brown, who was 29 at the time, told Torres that he wanted to keep her as his wife. She was subsequently held captive for 3 days before the man ultimately agreed to let her go. Torres didn't know her way back to the city, however, and managed to convince her captor to help her, promising she'd tell the police that Julio's killing had been an accident. Brown agreed, but made a stop at his lawyer's office before taking the young woman to the sheriff's department. As she'd promised, Torres told detectives that Brown hadn't purposefully shot her husband. She underwent a psychological evaluation after being deemed a suspicious witness by the police. The test revealed that she'd been suffering from Stockholm Syndrome, which had caused her to sympathize with her abuser. In 1977, Brown was convicted of first-degree murder and assault and was consequently sentenced to life in prison. Number 6. Carrie Neurauter. 19-year-old Carrie Neurauter was manipulated by her father, Lloyd, into helping him cover up the murder of her mother, which occurred at the family's home in Corning, New York, on August 28th of 2017. In an attempt to establish an alibi for himself, Lloyd pretended to travel to California for a job interview on the day of the murder. When the victim's body was found at her apartment, it appeared as though she'd hanged herself, but medical examiners noticed a strange mark on her chin, leading investigators to suspect foul play. Lloyd and his ex-wife had been embroiled in a custody battle for several years, with the latter, named Michelle, claiming the man had turned her children against her. Detectives became suspicious of Carrie and her father during their subsequent interviews, prompting them to tap the father and daughter's phone conversations. They discovered that Lloyd had forced the teen to choose between him and her mother, threatening to harm himself if she didn't side with him. On January the 24th of 2018, Both were charged with murder. Carrie reached a plea deal with prosecutors, agreeing to testify against her father. The latter was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of early release, while Carrie was paroled in January of 2020, having pleaded guilty to second-degree manslaughter. Number 5. Michael Adebowale and Michael Adebolajo. 22-year-old Michael Adebowale and Michael Adebolajo, aged 29, were reported followers of the extremist Muslim preachers known as Anjem Chowdhury and Sheikh Khalid Yassin. Radicalized by the latter two's teachings, Adebowale and Adebolajo murdered Lee Rigby on May the 22nd of 2013. The victim, a British Army soldier, was run over by the culprits as he was walking down a London street before being stabbed to death with a cleaver and several knives. The pair loitered at the scene while terrified witnesses contacted the authorities. The men indicated that they'd carried out Rigby's murder as an act of vengeance against the country's armed forces for the killing of Muslims following a prolonged standoff. The police were forced to shoot the suspects after they'd brandished guns and a cleaver. Adebowale and Adebolajo were hospitalized with critical injuries but ultimately managed to make full recoveries. Both suspects identified speeches given by Chowdhury and Khalid Yassin as having been powerful motivating factors in their decision to commit the deadly attack, reportedly planning to kill others prior to their arrests. They also claimed to be shocked that the Muslim community hadn't come out in support of their actions in the aftermath. On December the 19th of 2013, Adebowale and Adebolajo were found guilty and sentenced to spend the remainder of their lives behind bars. Number 4. Lori Vallow. Between September the 8th and 23rd of 2019, Lori Vallow and doomsday cult leader Chad Daybell murdered the former's young sons, Tylee and JJ, 2 months after allegedly plotting to gun down her ex-husband, Charles. The then 46-year-old mother divorced Charles, her fourth husband, shortly after threatening to kill him for getting in the way of the apocalypse. The man was fatally shot by Vallow's brother, who claimed self-defense and died before the case ever went to trial. Vallow subsequently moved to Idaho with her children and soon-to-be fifth husband, Daybell. It was around this time that the cultists brainwashed Vallow into believing her sons had become possessed. Following the horrific murders, the woman tried to fabricate a story to explain away her sons' sudden disappearance. She claimed that she would be homeschooling them, but actually rented a storage locker to hide their bodies. Concerned family members alerted the police, and the couple cleaned out the locker and their home before going into hiding. The children's remains, which had been burned and dismembered, were found buried in a pet cemetery at Daybell's Idaho property in the summer of 2020. Both he and Vallow were charged with murder, as well as conspiracy in connection to her ex-husband's death. Vallow was deemed incompetent on 2 different occasions before eventually being found fit to stand trial. Her husband reportedly faced the death penalty. Due to numerous delays and postponements, the trial was pushed to early 2023. Number 3. Keith Raniere. 62-year-old Keith Raniere, the founder of the multi-level marketing company Nexium, was found guilty of human trafficking, conspiracy, forced labor, fraud, and several other crimes on June the 19th of 2019. Most of Nexium's employees have been unaware of a secret faction within the company known as DOS, a cult-like group under Raniere's complete control. He reportedly used different mind-controlling techniques, including an extremely low-calorie diet, to manipulate people into following his cultish commands. Raniere suggested that limiting food intake would help cult members deal with psychological issues. He also coaxed victims into revealing family secrets and signing over property deeds to further extend his control over the group, all while he reaped significant financial benefits. 25 people issued impact statements during the subsequent criminal trial, although it's suspected that the number of people victimized was actually much higher. Raniere was ultimately sentenced to 120 years in prison. Today's topic was requested by Logan N. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Carwyn Roberts. Gwynedd, Wales resident Carwyn Roberts posed as a lawyer, a doctor, and a police officer to control his girlfriend from when they began dating in 2018, eventually manipulating her into falsely believing she was pregnant. The 29-year-old man created several fake email accounts, forged employment documents, and edited an ultrasound in an attempt to obtain complete control over his partner, whose name wasn't released to the media. As a direct result of Roberts' manipulation, the woman was persuaded to quit her job. The man also accused her of having multiple affairs, claiming a stranger had installed security cameras in their home and that there was footage of at least one of her purported encounters. The police ultimately got involved when the woman's relatives became concerned about her partner's treatment of her. Roberts was arrested on a charge of coercive behavior in an intimate relationship. He pleaded guilty on January the 18th of 2021 and was given a 2-year suspended jail sentence. Roberts was also ordered to perform 250 hours of community service and was given a lifelong restraining order preventing him from contacting his victim or making posts about her online. Number 1. Helen Joy. On February the 1st of 2021, 54-year-old Helen Joy was found dead in her Leasowe, England apartment with what were described as horrific injuries. Police arrived at the scene after her partner, 45-year-old Kevin Ashton, told his father that Joy was dead. A subsequent autopsy concluded that she died of hypothermia and that the more than 120 external wounds she'd sustained had worsened her condition. The victim's daughter, Casey Hyland, immediately told detectives she believed Ashton to have been responsible for her mother's death. Hyland claimed that Joy's personality and behavior had changed drastically ever since she'd become romantically involved with the man. The relationship had allegedly caused the victim to begin drinking heavily and isolate herself from the rest of her family. When questioned by police, Ashton claimed that Joy had inflicted her severe injuries on herself and that he'd attempted to stop her. Following a trial at Liverpool Crown Court, however, Ashton was convicted of murder and on November the 12th of 2021 was sentenced to a minimum of 19 years in prison. Thanks for watching. Would you rather live a year in a Scientologist community or never be allowed to watch a movie other than Top Gun for the rest of your life? Let us know in the comments section below.